Mixing with Mike plugin of the week comes from Universal Audio. It is the Neve 1084 preamp and EQ. So this is a welcome addition to 1084. There are actually a whole series of Neve EQs, some of which are emulated more than others. You see a whole ton of 1073 emulations out there. You see less on the 1084, which makes it a little bit more of a unique addition to the Universal Audio plugin collection, and it's a great one. It's a unison preamp, so essentially you get a very similar sounding, in design the same preamp as what you get with the 1073. And essentially, this was a follow up to the 1073 as a version or an upgrade kind of addition to the Neve collection that would give you extra frequencies on the high frequency shelf. So on the 1073 that you see here on the left, this is fixed at 12 kilohertz. Here you have a selection for the top end shelf of 10, 12, or 16K. And then on the mid-range bands, you have all the same frequency selections here, but you have the addition of a high Q switch, so that narrows the Q or bandwidth of the boost or attenuation that occurs with any of the selected frequencies. And then the low frequency shelf is identical on this end, and then you have the addition of the low pass filter that's here, and also a selection of different frequencies on the high pass filter. So you see here you got 50, 80, 160, 300. Here you have 40, 70, or 45, 70, 160, 360. So it gives you a slightly different tonal coloration, and a bit more flexibility in terms of your working with it. So it's a great option if you just love the 1073, but you kind of wish it had a few more options in the way that it works. The 1084 is a perfect option for that. So I'm going to take this out for a second. Maybe I'll refer back to it if necessary. The thing I really want to cover with this that's kind of interesting is that many people kind of feel limited when you sit here and you have a 3-band EQ. And the thinking of this, in terms of the way that you might approach the equalization, needs to shift a little bit in terms of the way that you actually work with it, for attacking drums or whatever. And you'll often feel like you're missing that one band that's in there. But there are a lot of creative ways to look at it. And the way that Universal Audio has done this emulation is very similar to the way they did the 1073, where they went through all of the gain structure points. There's actually all the way through to the Penny and Giles fader and output amp for the channel. So you're actually getting the whole thing from the preamp structure, the whole line input and mic input. You got high and low impedance switches, which will change the coloration. This is something that if you were working on the console, you'd have to go underneath the console to flip the switch for this. It wasn't something that was surface available, like you don't see it anywhere on the surface of the plugin here, and it's like a cassette that would pop into the console, so that would have to be done from underneath. But you have all the other features that you would want to have, in terms of if you're going to run it as a unison preamp, right? You got the pad switch and all of this stuff. And then when you go to the impedance matching here, of course, the Universal Audio system will automatically switch that with the unison preamp through your Apollo hardware or UA hardware. So let's begin by just kind of going through some basic things. I actually I set up a number of these channels. I'm not sure how many that will do, but let's just kind of start here just to kind of approach some things, because I think one of the things that is somewhat confusing here, and I think what makes it a little bit easier to use is if you kind of understand the interaction between the filters and stuff. Because normally, for example, if I have a kick drum and I want to boost, and say I want to boost at 60 hertz, I'm usually looking to do it around a bell curve, and I want to be able to control the bandwidth around that. But you could sort of chase that same type of effect here. So if we have a kick drum, for example, I could still do my boost at 60. Helps if you put the EQ in. Try it that way. Right, so you get that nice rich low end, but now I can chase that with a high pass filter at 45. Right, and now I can get like that thicker low end kick drum sound. It seems more focused and honed in, maybe around that. And if I want to, I can. And you see, I have to boost more because this is the cutoff frequency, so it's cutting up higher than that frequency wise. So I'm sort of chasing that, but I can't switch it up to 110. Right, and that gives it a little bit more power, so I can kind of play with that. I think I like it better at 60 right here. And this usually becomes the decision point here, when you're working with things like this, whether you want to cut away at some of the low mid. Right, and then get a little bit more of the attack up here on the top end. And then you could chase this on the backside here. And so it can, in some ways, it can kind of enable you to kind of work in some ways that you might not normally work, and you have to kind of think it through. The output gain is also important because usually with most analog components like this in emulations, part of what kind of gives them their sound is actually boosting. And they actually sound better. You get more out of them. You start to dig out a bit more of the harmonic richness of the components by boosting. And so the way that you can counterbalance that, obviously, is by using the fader to kind of pull it down to match your gain. So one, at least if you're working within your signal flow and you're maintaining some, integrity in terms of, your gain structure, you want to have it so that each plugin that you have, as you bypass it in and out, you get the fundamental EQ, the shift in tone or frequencies as you want them, but you're not making the kick drum like 10 dB louder or 6 dB lower, whatever the difference is. So you have the output fader here just to sort of match that. So at least when you A/B it in and out, you're getting something that's closely representative to the same feeling of gain, right? That's the basic idea. So when you think of it that way, if you pull this down 3 dB, it's basically pulling the gain down of everything 3 dB, and then your boost points are pushing through that. So you're attenuating all the frequencies that you're not boosting, which is basically another way to look at it. And that, in a way, gives you more interactivity. So there's a, if you really want to kind of dig into this and kind of make a do a mix with this, and you always feel like you're limited. If you really actually start to think a little bit more creatively about the way you approach it, it's an amazing setup that you can use for really creating that vintage sound. Part of it is the limitation, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at here. So let's see what we have here, like with the snare drum. That we didn't want. There we go. All right, so here I'm gonna start with a little bit more air on the top. Here again, I'll probably chase down at the bottom end. And now if I want to boost to like a sharper, get a little bit more, mid-range, attack, right? So make it a little bit more aggressive, I can go to a mid-range frequency boost here. right? So I can go, the high Q switch is a way of narrowing the Q, and it'll give you a much more focused, sharper tone and it works amazing with guitars when you really want to, like, key on a particular tone for a guitar, like finding a tonal center. That high Q switch it will sound more processed. It'll really imbue a real sharp tonal character into the sound, and that's a valuable tool. Or if you have something you're trying to cut away, it's also valuable for finding that frequency and then cutting it away, right? All right, so I have here is my overheads left and right. I'm not sure. Yes, they are linked together. That's what I just wanted to check. Okay, so here, maybe I want to bring in a little bit more body into those. Sounds like a lot of the low end is kind of cut out of them. And if I want to add a little air, I can do that. Helps if I put the EQ in. So just listen to this. Here is it. Right, and here I can maybe shift this down here to get a little bit more of the cymbals down to 12K. In the hi-hat. So you could hear how it really, can just so powerfully open up the sound while, preserving all the body and warmth in it. So here, let's go to the 1084 on bass. To me, the 1073 is just like the greatest thing ever that happened to bass. Just give me just like a nice little 220 shelf, either 1.6 or 700 boost. And put the EQ in again. It's just so simple. If I feel like if I'm getting noise or whatever, I can always warm up the top end. Doesn't feel like it needs that. Sometimes that helps it to kind of sink down and let the the overheads kind of rise above the bass a little bit. But this is kind of money, and you're getting very much the same basic vibe with it. There's something in here that just brings this harmonic richness out, which is just so powerful. When you get to things like guitars and stuff like that, let me see. I just like have a guitar solo here, so maybe that's like a good component to add here in the beginning, and just show you a little bit about that, especially working with the tone, right, with the high Q switch. where you can get into like a mid-range frequency here, which can sometimes sound like a bit harsh or a bit too biting. Here with the Neve and with the high Q switch, it's just, it just seems to just be butter. Kind of really fills out that mid-range, which just images so clearly and tightly, yet it still kind of has a warmth and body to it, which is great. So. And then it just sort of follows through all the other instrumentation. So there's like a main keyboard here, an organ, maybe you want to find like a point in the organ that you can kind of boost, so let's go for 700. Let's see. Kind of find a nice spot for that. Just kind of sitting there, and then let's just throw on a vocal in here, just so we can kind of hear a little bit of what that does. Let me see. I may have to skip over to the verse here. Skip over to the verse section, and just here.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turned toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it. Jesus' yeast gave me a priest infection. He wouldn't give me bread. I'm on funeral reception. I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turned toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it. Jesus' yeast gave me a priest infection. He wouldn't give me bread. I'm on funeral reception.
Go back one quick step here.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance.
So you can hear how musical that it sounds, in terms of the way that you work, even like boosting certain frequencies that are sometimes hard to dig out, which are one of the really the most powerful things to me about the Neve. And people talk about the low end or the crisp top end or whatever. I think it's like the way that it deals with the low mids is almost unlike any other console that's out there. And most of the line of EQs, or practically all of the line of EQs from that era, from that 80 series era, have a very similar quality where they just seem to manage that, low mid-range energy just so powerfully, like so richly and just so harmonically rich that it just images solidly without ever sounding muddy. And in working and learning how to balance all the different things, especially with the high pass and low pass filters, it's just a very powerful EQ. This is a really great addition. I really love this because it really has the openness and clarity of the 1073, but obviously you have the more frequency options to work with. So let's say be it quick in and out for the whole mix. Just give you an idea what it overall sounds like.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will.
Ooh, no. Okay.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it.
All right. So a great EQ. I think this is a great addition to the Universal Audio collection. They did a great job. I thought they did an amazing job on the 1073, and this is equally as good, if not better. And certainly of the very few 1084 emulations that are out there that are not enough, this is like hands down the best that I've heard. And just in terms of the focus, the clarity, preserving the warmth and the accuracy of it. Very powerful EQ. So great work by Universal Audio as always, and that's why we have it as the plugin of the week. UA Neve 1084 Preamp and EQ.